Supreme Court of Appeal has found that liquidators of Bosasa had the authority to sell assets of the controversial company. Alleged corruption at the company was laid bare during the state capture inquiry when its former COO, Mr. Angelo Agrizzi, took the stand, revealing serious acts of corruption. Among those he implicated were senior top ANC officials who allegedly received bribes. Well, what implication will this latest ruling have? Nthabiseng Dubazana from Dubazana Attorneys is going to talk to us now, weighing in on this. Nthabiseng, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. It's a very important ruling by the Supreme Court of Appeal from the reports that I've seen, but I'm not the expert. You are. Why is this ruling important?
Well, considering what was exposed during the State Capture Commission and also the reasons why the company was actually getting liquidated, it is important because now the people that were implicated or mentioned during the State Capture Commission are now going to be called in and be asked whether or not, the reasons rather, why they should not return the money or alleged bribes that they received during their the tenure of being interacting with Bosasa. So now we're looking at things like birthday parties that were thrown, certain monies, it is alleged that bribe packs were given, and, birthday parties and dinner dates were done. So now when these private inquiries are being done, it is to establish whether or not there was some kind of unwarranted advances that were made by Bosasa in order for them to gain. This is now within the ambit of corruption, for them to gain certain tenders, perhaps from government, etc. So should those inquiries be done and it be held that indeed the money that were afforded to the people that were named in these papers, then they will have to then pay back the money into the Bosasa liquidators account in order for them to pay the creditors that Bosasa now has to pay now that they're under liquidation. And so
it means what you're saying, it means the liquidators, the way is now open for the liquidators after this ruling by the Supreme Court of Appeal for them to take serious steps against those implicated in the Bosasa matter, including the late Gavin Watson's family, for example.
Correct, and from what we've gathered in the papers in the SCA matter, it seems that there were certain things that were done when the family members were trying to become directors, etc., when the company was changing from, is it AGH to what is now Bosasa. So in the interim, when that was being done, they kept applying for interdicts, whether urgent or not, to prevent that certain assets of Bosasa be sold off.
Yeah, so it was Bosasa, then it became AGH, the Africa Global company. So what about the political, some political heavyweights in the ANC were mentioned as well. So could the liquidators as well go to them and say, in the private confidential inquiry, let's talk?
Correct. They now have that leeway to do so. In fact, the court said that in their previous matter, I think it was in 2019, if I'm not mistaken, whereby the SCA itself had already granted them permission to do that. These other high court applications do not supersede what the 2019 ruling of the SCA said, which was then to grant them the permission to go after the people who were debtors to the estate, to the liquidation estate. So now they can go after all these heavyweights and then question them, and if they're not happy with what is being said, and they can demand the money back. And if the parties that have been questioned still stand on their ground and say that they do not have any reason to return the money because it was not for gain for Bosasa, it was actually just out of the goodness of their hearts, then they can take further steps perhaps and take it as the criminal route and take it either for a corruption case or theft case or fraud case, depending on what the merits of the situation was, that the money left the account of Bosasa and go to these individuals that have been named.
So basically, we as the public will not know what's going to happen before a confidential inquiry, which is private by the liquidators. But if the outcome of that, I'm just trying to clarify this as well for myself, if the outcome of it leads to further action, that further action could be prosecutorial against any of these individuals that are implicated, depending how the liquidators progress in their confidential inquiry following this court ruling.
100%. It can go criminal, it can go civil, but most likely the easiest way, if they cannot get the money out of them, they might want to have criminal charges laid against the individuals in order to, follow within the ambit of the state being so hard on against corruption cases.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the outcome is.
Yeah, let's just to remind ourselves. I mean, I remember the names like Nomvula Mukonyane. You mentioned parties and bribe packs and all kinds of nice things that were done. Gwede Mantashe's names come up in terms of Bosasa, the former health minister, Zweli Mkhize as well, and the son of the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, with that 500,000 that he got from Bosasa. So all those individuals now, the court has opened the way for them to be under a private, confidential inquiry with the liquidators. These kind of processes, in Nthabiseng, from what you know, legal, how long can they take? I mean, because this has been going on for quite some time. You mentioned the auctioning of Bosasa assets way back in 2019 that took place then.
Yes, it might take quite some time before we see any fruits from this tree, to be quite honest. There's going to be an individual inquiry. There's going to be perhaps paperwork like bank statements are going to be submitted. In actual fact, Ndadera Maposa's son, in the papers that were filed in the SCA matter, it is alleged rather that he got paid 3 million, and the 500,000 that you just mentioned in the current third installment of the corruption inquiry that was done by the Chief Justice. It is said that 500,000 didn't fall within the ambit of corruption, if I'm not mistaken, but the one that we are focusing on right now in the SCA matter is the 3 million that the Ndadera Maposa's son received while he was having, it is called a retainer that he was receiving. So it would be a retainer for what? What kind of contract existed between the two parties, etc. So it might take some time before we get any answers.
So the liquidators now are free to go and knock on their doors and say, let's get some money back. And otherwise, there could be some other further legal action. Thank you very much for clarifying. That's Nthabiseng Dubazana from Dubazana Attorneys. Now, in another